The colony of Avalon 9 floated peacefully among the stars, its towering structures a testament to human resilience and ambition. It had taken decades to terraform this once barren moon, to build homes, schools, and thriving cities. Families lived here. Children played in the parks. Scientists worked tirelessly to push the boundaries of knowledge, but none of them were prepared for what came next. The first sign of danger came as a flicker on the colony's long-range scanners. The defense outposts detected an anomaly, something massive approaching from deep space. Lieutenant Harris, stationed at the Orbital Command Center, leaned forward in his chair, frowning at the readings. A fleet. A large one. But there had been no scheduled arrivals, no diplomatic visits planned. His stomach tightened as he magnified the data. The ships were unknown, their signatures unfamiliar. Within minutes, alarms blared across the colony. Automated defense systems activated, targeting the intruders. Civilian broadcasts were interrupted, warning citizens to take shelter. Panic spread like wildfire. Parents grabbed their children and rushed to underground bunkers. Shopkeepers abandoned their stores. The streets, once full of life, became a scene of chaos. Then the first shots were fired. A massive energy blast from the leading alien warship struck Avalon 9's outermost defense station. The explosion was so powerful it lit up the entire sky, a fiery bloom against the cold darkness of space. The shockwave rippled through the colony, shattering windows, sending people sprawling onto the ground. Lieutenant Harris watched in horror as one by one, the colony's defensive platforms were reduced to debris. The aliens hadn't come to negotiate. They had come to annihilate. Governor Elaine Carter, the highest-ranking official on Avalon 9, stood in the emergency command center, her face pale but determined. She had served in the military before becoming a leader here, and she knew what an attack like this meant. There would be no reinforcements, no miracle fleet coming to save them. Avalon 9 was on its own. "Send a distress signal to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them Avalon 9 is under attack. We need help." The communications officer, hands shaking, relayed the message. Across light years of space, the desperate plea for aid raced toward humanity's core worlds. But deep down, Governor Carter knew the truth. Even if Earth responded immediately, it would take too long for their fleets to arrive. Outside, the Talveri warships descended. They were monstrous things, dark metallic behemoths bristling with weapons. They fired indiscriminately, obliterating entire sections of the colony in seconds. The central spaceport, the heart of Avalon 9's trade and travel, was torn apart in a single bombardment. Ships trying to flee were gunned down before they could reach orbit. Escape was impossible. The ground forces landed soon after. The Exhilarating were tall, reptilian creatures with armor plating fused to their bodies, their weapons humming with energy. They moved with brutal efficiency, executing anyone who resisted. Soldiers, police officers, even armed civilians, none of them stood a chance. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely unprepared for an enemy so ruthless. Screams filled the streets. Fires spread unchecked. The air was thick with smoke, the scent of burning metal and flesh mixing into a horrific stench. Families huddled together in underground shelters, listening as explosions rattled the walls. Children cried in terror, their parents whispering desperate reassurances they didn't believe themselves. Lieutenant Harris and a small team of surviving soldiers fought from the shadows, using the ruins for cover. They knew they couldn't win, but they refused to surrender. Every shot they fired was an act of defiance. Every exhilarating they took down was a message. Humanity did not bow easily, but one by one, his men fell. The exhilarating were too many, their weapons too powerful, and as Harris crouched behind a broken wall, out of ammunition, bleeding from a wound in his side, he knew this was the end. Governor Carter remained at her post until the last moment. When the exhilarating stormed the command center, she faced them with unflinching resolve. "You think this is a victory," she said, voice cold. "You have no idea what you've done." The alien commander tilted his head, curious. But before he could respond, Carter activated the last failsafe. A data burst was sent directly to Earth, one final message before the colony fell. Then the Salveri pulled the trigger. Avalon 9 burned. The distress signal reached Earth 3 hours later. The message was played before the United Stellar Forces, before the leaders of humanity. The room was silent as the footage flickered on the screen. The destruction, the slaughter, the screams, and then Governor Carter's final words. Admiral Vincent Graves, the highest-ranking officer in the fleet, sat motionless as he watched. His hands tightened into fists, his jaw clenched, his heart pounded with fury. Then he stood. "Prepare the Armada," he said. His voice was calm, cold, unforgiving. Around him, the officers hesitated for only a moment. Then they moved. Orders were given. Commands relayed. Across Earth's vast military network, war preparations began. Fleets were mobilized. Factories shifted into overdrive, churning out warships and weapons at an unprecedented rate. The skies over Earth darkened as thousands of vessels took formation, joining the growing armada. They would not wait for the Salveri to strike again. Humanity would answer. And this time, there would be no mercy. The war room aboard Earth's primary fleet command center was filled with tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. Holograms of the burning colony flickered before the assembled admirals and military officials. The faces of Avalon 9's fallen leaders, the ruined cityscapes, and the merciless alien invaders played on repeat. The message had been received. The call for vengeance had been made. Admiral Vincent Graves stood at the center of it all, his expression unreadable, his hands clasped behind his back. But inside, a storm raged. He had seen colonies fall before, had witnessed battles lost. But this was not war. This was extermination. The Salveri had not issued demands. They had not sent warnings. They had come like executioners, wiping out an entire human settlement without hesitation. The politicians debated among themselves, voices raised in panic and outrage. Some called for diplomacy. Others demanded an immediate counterattack. But Graves had already made his decision. He turned to his officers, his voice quiet but firm. "We do not negotiate with butchers," he said. "We do not plead with monsters. We strike back." Silence filled the room as his words sank in. The fleet commanders exchanged glances, reading the fire in each other's eyes. Then, one by one, they nodded. There would be no peace talks, no hesitation. Humanity would answer blood with blood. Across Earth's core worlds, the order was given: mobilize the Armada. The shipyards of Mars, Titan, and Europa sprang to life, warships rolling out of massive orbital docks at an unprecedented pace. The United Stellar Forces had always maintained a formidable fleet, but never before had they unleashed their full might. Not like this. Not with a singular, terrifying purpose. Within days, over 700,000 warships had been assembled, the largest human fleet in history. Admiral Graves stood aboard the U.S. Retribution, the flagship of the United Stellar Forces. From its massive bridge, he looked out at the endless void, where the vast armada had gathered. Battleships, dreadnoughts, carriers, and destroyers stretched into infinity, their hulls gleaming under distant stars. Each one carried soldiers who had seen the footage of Avalon 9. Each one carried men and women who had lost someone to the massacre. The Salveri had made a fatal mistake. They thought they had crushed a colony. Instead, they had awakened a storm. Graves opened the fleet-wide communication channel, his image appearing on every ship, every command deck, every soldier's personal screen. His voice was steady, filled with cold resolve. The Salveri came to Avalon 9 as executioners. They did not offer surrender. They did not grant mercy. They did not distinguish between soldier and civilian. They came to kill, and they succeeded. Over 3 million of our people are dead, wiped out as if they were nothing. They thought we would be afraid. They thought we would run. A pause, a heartbeat of silence. But they were wrong. He took a slow breath, eyes burning with fury. Today, we remind the galaxy who we are. Today, we remind them that humanity does not kneel. That for every world they burn, we will set fire to 10 of theirs. For every life they take, we will take 100. We are not prey. We are not weak. We do not beg. His next words echoed across the fleet, carried on the lips of thousands of soldiers, whispered by those who had lost everything. We are the storm. And with that, the fleet surged forward, engines roaring as 700,000 warships moved as one. Toward war, toward vengeance, toward the total annihilation of the Galveri. The fleet surged through the void, a tidal wave of steel and fire stretching across the blackness of space. 700,000 warships, each bristling with weapons, engines burning bright as they tore through the stars with a singular purpose: vengeance. Aboard the U.S. Retribution, Admiral Vincent Graves stood at the command deck, eyes locked onto the incoming data streams. Scout ships had already advanced ahead, scanning for Galveri positions. The enemy thought themselves untouchable, believing humanity to be fractured and weak. But they had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated the wrath of an entire species. "Admiral," came a voice from the communications officer. "Our forward scouts have located the enemy fleet. They've taken position around their stronghold in the Zalthar system." Graves turned toward the main tactical display. The Zalthar system was deep in Galveri-controlled space, a fortified position they had long considered impenetrable. The aliens had gathered their forces there, likely expecting humanity to hesitate, to fear the strength of their defenses. They were wrong. "Show me the enemy fleet," Graves commanded. The holographic display shifted, revealing the enemy armada. Hundreds of thousands of Galveri warships in tight formation clustered around their central command station. Their fleet was vast, heavily armed, and protected by layers of planetary defense systems. But none of that mattered, because the humans had come for war. "Patch me through to the fleet," Graves ordered. A moment later, his voice carried through every ship, every cockpit, every battle station. "The enemy thinks they are safe behind their walls of steel and fire. They think we will hesitate, that we will turn back." His voice was calm, steady, but they are fools. They do not understand what happens when humanity has nothing left to lose. They took Avalon 9 from us. Now, we take everything from them. The order came without hesitation. "All ships, advance and engage." The battle began in an instant. The void between the two forces erupted in fire as the first salvos were unleashed. Humanity's warships surged forward, their weapons raining hell upon the Galveri lines. Railguns, plasma cannons, missile barrages. The sheer force of the attack was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Galveri tried to respond. Their warships returned fire, launching countermeasures, but they were overwhelmed. The humans did not fight with caution. They did not hold back. This was not a battle for territory. It was not a war for diplomacy. This was retribution, and it came like a storm. Dreadnoughts ripped through enemy formations, their cannons tearing Galveri battleships apart. Fighters weaved between the chaos, engaging enemy interceptors in deadly dogfights. Carriers launched wave after wave of bombers, striking at the heart of the enemy fleet. On the bridge of the Retribution, Graves watched as the tide of battle turned. The Galveri were faltering. They had never faced an enemy willing to fight like this, to burn everything in their path. "Push forward," he ordered. "No mercy." The human fleet pressed the attack, breaking through the Galveri defenses and driving deep into their stronghold. The once mighty alien empire, so sure of its superiority, was crumbling before the fury of a species that refused to be conquered. And as the Galveri warships began to break formation, as panic spread through their ranks, one thing became clear. Humanity had not just come for revenge. They had come to end the war. "You said," The battle raged across the Zalthar system, fire and destruction painting the void in chaos. Humanity's fleet carved through the Xalvari lines like a blade through flesh, relentless and unforgiving. Enemy warships exploded in brilliant bursts of flame, debris scattering like shattered bones in the dark. But still, the Xalvari fought. Admiral Vincent Graves stood firm on the bridge of the U.S. Retribution, his gaze locked on the tactical display. The enemy fleet was breaking apart, their formations crumbling under the sheer ferocity of the human assault. But they were not finished yet. "Admiral," Commander Sarah Holt called from her station. "Enemy reinforcements incoming. 200,000 ships just jumped into the system." Graves narrowed his eyes. So the Xalvari still had fight left in them. Good. That would make their defeat all the more satisfying. "Orders, sir." "Hold the line," Graves said, his voice steady, "and prepare for the next wave." The Xalvari reinforcements wasted no time. They came in fast, weapons hot, flanking the human armada in an attempt to crush them from both sides. But humanity had not come this far to be trapped. "All dreadnoughts, execute Omega formation," Graves commanded. The fleet adjusted with precision honed by years of war. The largest human warships repositioned, forming an unbreakable wall of firepower, while strike groups moved to intercept enemy flanking maneuvers. Fighters screamed through the chaos, weaving between plasma bolts and missile fire, striking with deadly efficiency. The battle reached a fever pitch. Explosions lit up the battlefield as both sides suffered heavy losses. The Retribution shook violently as enemy fire slammed into its shields, but it held. Humanity's warships refused to break. The Xalvari had never encountered such unrelenting brutality. Their empire had always ruled through fear, through the knowledge that no one could challenge them. But now, for the first time in their history, they were afraid. "Admiral, enemy flagship detected," Holt reported. "It's the Zalthar Prime, leading the reinforcement fleet." Graves' lips curled into a cold smile. "Targeted. We end this now." The Zalthar Prime was a behemoth, the pride of the Xalvari fleet. Armed with weapons capable of shattering moons, it was a terror to any who opposed their empire. But now it faced something far worse. It faced a species that had been pushed too far. The Retribution and its accompanying fleet redirected their fire. Thousands of railgun slugs, plasma lances, and missile barrages rained upon the enemy flagship. The Zalthar Prime fought back, its cannons tearing through human warships, but it was outnumbered, outgunned. A final barrage struck its engines, and the colossal warship detonated in a blinding inferno. The explosion sent shockwaves through the Xalvari fleet, their remaining forces hesitating for the first time. Graves seized the moment. "Broadcast this across all channels," he ordered. "Let them hear our words." The transmission was sent to every remaining Xalvari ship, to their entire empire. Graves stood tall, his voice carrying the weight of an entire species' wrath. "You took our colony. You thought we would run. You thought we would beg. You were wrong. We are humanity, and we do not forgive." He let the silence stretch before delivering his final command. "Destroy them all." The human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. The Xalvari, once so mighty, so confident, now faced a nightmare beyond their worst fears. The extinction of their empire had begun. "You said." The Xalvari empire was collapsing. Their once mighty fleets, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, were now shattered remnants scattered across burning star systems. Their strongholds, once considered impregnable, had been reduced to ruins. Their warriors, once feared, now fled in panic. Humanity had done what no other species dared. They had not just retaliated, they had annihilated their enemy. Admiral Vincent Graves stood on the bridge of the U.S. Retribution, watching the tactical displays update in real time. What was left of the Xalvari forces was falling back, trying to regroup, but there was nowhere left to run. The human fleet had hunted them down across the Zalthar system, and now only one target remained: Alvora, the enemy's homeworld. "Admiral, the final defensive fleet has formed around their capital planet," Commander Sarah Holt reported. 300,000 ships still remain. But she hesitated. "But what, Commander?" Graves asked, his voice cold. "They're not attacking," she said, her brows furrowing. "Their fleet is just holding position." Graves studied the display. It was unusual. The Salveri had fought desperately at every turn, even when defeat was certain. "Why stop now? Open a wideband channel," he ordered. "Let's see if they still have the courage to face us." The communications officer nodded, and a moment later, the transmission was open. "This is Admiral Vincent Graves of the United Stellar Forces. Alvora stands alone. Your fleets are broken. Your empire is dead. You have one choice: surrender or be erased from history." Silence. For a long, tense moment, there was no response. Then the screen flickered to life. A towering Salveri, clad in ceremonial war armor, appeared. His reptilian face was scared, his dark eyes filled with something Graves had never seen in their kind before: fear. "I am High Warlord Korak," the alien said, his voice rasping, "and I will not beg for mercy." Graves gave a slow nod. "Then you understand what happens next." That Salveri leader bared his fangs. "We never believed you humans to be a true threat. We saw you as just another species to dominate, another world to break. But we were wrong." His voice grew quiet. "You are worse than we ever imagined." Graves felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just cold purpose. "You came to our worlds unprovoked," he said. "You slaughtered 3 million innocent men, women, and children on Avalon 9, and you thought there would be no consequences." Korak exhaled heavily. "I see them now, Admiral, and I see the end of my people." Graves watched him carefully. "Surrender your world, and we will end this." A long silence. Korak's eyes flickered with something, defeat, perhaps. Then he said, "We will not kneel." Graves gave a single nod. "Then you will burn." The transmission cut. "All ships," Graves commanded, his voice like iron. "Prepare for planetary assault. We finish this war today." A moment later, the first waves of bombardments began. Alvora, the once proud homeworld of the Salveri, was about to become nothing more than ash. The firestorm descended upon Alvora. From orbit, humanity's fleet unleashed devastation unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Massive railgun slugs, each the size of a skyscraper, plunged through the atmosphere, shattering entire cities upon impact. Plasma bombardments turned sprawling landscapes into seas of molten glass. Missile barrages rained down like vengeful meteors, reducing enemy strongholds to nothing but craters. The Salveri fought back, as Graves knew they would. Their planetary defenses erupted with counterfire, filling the void with flak bursts and laser turrets that scorched the heavens. But it was futile. Their last defenses crumbled within minutes. Their remaining warships, those that hadn't already fled or been destroyed, tried one final, desperate charge against the human fleet. It ended in seconds. "Admiral, the last of their orbital forces have been neutralized," Commander Holt reported. "The skies are ours." Graves gave a slow nod. The bridge of the U.S. retribution was silent. No cheers, no celebration. Just grim, quiet purpose. "Deploy ground forces," he ordered. "Leave nothing behind." Across the planet, drop pods and assault craft tore through the clouds, bringing legions of human marines onto Alvora's surface. They met scattered resistance, Salveri soldiers, desperate and terrified, trying to mount a final defense. But they were no match for the fury of a species that had come for vengeance. The streets of their once proud capital city ran red with alien blood. Human troops stormed government halls, burned war academies to the ground, and toppled statues of Salveri warlords. The echoes of gunfire and explosions filled the air. mingling with the panicked cries of a dying empire. Deep beneath the ruins of the central command bunker, High Warlord Korak sat alone. The walls trembled with the distant blasts of orbital bombardments. His species, his people, everything was gone. A heavy thud echoed through the chamber as the reinforced doors were breached. A squad of human soldiers stormed in, weapons raised, their armor covered in the dust of war. And then Admiral Graves stepped forward. His expression was unreadable. His eyes, cold as the void. Korak exhaled, looking up at the human who had brought his empire to ruin. "I never thought it would end like this," the alien rasped. Graves stared at him for a long moment. Then, without a word, he raised his sidearm and pulled the trigger. A single gunshot. It was over. Outside, across the war-torn remnants of Salvora, the human forces moved through the ruins, ensuring that no threats remained. Fires still raged. Smoke curled into the sky. And at last, Admiral Graves gave the final order. "Signal the fleet," he said. "We are done here." The human warships, their weapons still glowing hot from battle, began to pull away from the ruined world. They had come to avenge Avalon 9. They had come to erase the exhilarating. And now, there was nothing left. The war was over. Humanity had done the impossible. The exhilarating, once the galaxy's most feared conquerors, had been wiped from existence. Their fleets were dust. Their homeworld was a lifeless ruin, burning beneath the silent stars. Their empire, which had stood for 1,000 years, had crumbled in the span of weeks. Admiral Vincent Graves sat in his private quarters aboard the U.S. Retribution, staring at the tactical display. The screen no longer showed battle formations or enemy fleets, just an empty system where Exalvora once stood, a graveyard of wreckage, a testament to humanity's wrath. A soft chime broke the silence. "Come in," he said. Commander Sarah Holt stepped inside, her expression unreadable. She stood at attention for a moment before speaking. "Sir, the fleet is requesting orders. Do we return home?" Graves exhaled slowly. "How many exhilarating survivors?" Holt hesitated. "Some scattered remnants. A few civilian ships managed to flee before the final assault. No military forces remain." Graves nodded, already knowing the answer. There would be no resistance, no counterattack, no future uprising. The exhilarating were gone. "Tell the fleet to prepare for departure," he said. "Set course for Earth." Holt didn't move. "Sir, if I may ask, did we do the right thing?" Graves looked at her, but she wasn't meeting his gaze. She was staring at the screen. The charred remains of a dead world. "Millions of human lives were lost on Avalon 9, he said, his voice calm but heavy. "Children, families, civilians who never even had the chance to fight back." "I know," she whispered. "They gave us no mercy," Graves continued. "And so we returned the favor." Silence stretched between them. "War changes us," Holt murmured. I hope we don't become something worse than what we fought against." Graves didn't answer immediately. He simply turned back to the display, watching as the fleet moved into formation. "We were never the monsters in this war," he said finally. "We were the consequence." Holt gave a slow nod, then saluted. "Understood, sir." She turned to leave, pausing only once at the door. "Earth will call this a victory. The galaxy will call it something else." "Let them," Graves said. The door slid shut behind her. A moment later, the engines of 700,000 warships ignited, and the fleet vanished into the void. The war was over, but the legend of humanity's wrath had just begun.